So we're in week 10 now. I'm really happy with everything you guys are doing. Great work as always, and I'm really appreciative of that. I want to apologize again for my lectures. I have a cold in them, and it's understandable but a little bit annoying. At some point, I really do need to revise all of my recorded voice lectures because of things like that. But I'll be honest, when you're teaching as many classes as me, the amount of time it takes me to make those video lectures is just a lot. And sometimes I need to revise them, sometimes I need to fix things or update certain things, and then I do that. But I'm just being honest. As long as you guys can hear it and understand it and the information is accurate, it's going to be a while before I actually fix those. I will watch my videos over again, and kind of just double check on everything. So you should be okay. But again, I apologize for the lack of smoothness in the lectures. And what am I going to say? Oh, so this week we don't do a reading from people's history, as you'll see there. And so we do a lot more reading from primary text. Primary texts are like direct sources, right, of the time. And I say this in the lectures, but I want to remind this to you and tell you that I don't expect you to read all of Frederick Douglass's narrative, and I don't expect you to read all of Self-Reliance by Emerson. I want you to go to those links and read as much as you can to get some sort of understanding about how to do some of the assignments. Okay, so I want you to do that. The section I have on Mormonism, again, I also say this in my lectures, but I want to clarify that I'm not trying to promote Mormonism, and I'm definitely not trying to talk against it. I'm exposing you to the fact that it is a real indigenous American religion. Indigenous in the sense that the way it develops is not only that it starts here in the United States, but it has its own unique concept about American history itself, which there are some Mormon historians, or actually many, that try to link their vision of U.S. history to their spiritual narrative, and they've struggled to make a case for that. I'm not here to settle this or to discount someone's spiritual tradition about history. I'm just merely telling you the consensus view about how they conceptualize it does come up against some pretty big walls with the secular historical establishment. But people are always debating history, and that's what it's about. So what I'm just trying to say is that I have this link that is a Mormon site, and I'm sending you there to expose you to this concept directly from the source, right? Of what they're saying. And Mormons are always more than willing to communicate their ideas to you. Now, I mentioned in the announcement section, in the discussion board, that we're not having a religious debate, and I realize it can be a very difficult, fine line between where that starts and ends. If you're a Mormon, you want to make a case for your idea, and that's totally, I understand. And if you're a very religious person that believes in certain religions being true or false, you might feel compelled to try to get in on that, and that's not helpful to us, because what I want this to be is information. So again, if you're a Mormon and you want to clarify something about your Mormon history or the Mormon religion in context to the subject we're talking about, then that's great. And if you're someone who wants to kind of question or discuss with them and ask questions about it, get questions about it, that person's not under a test. And in other words, it's not a philosophical, theological, political debate. It is a way to get information from each other. Okay, that's how I'd like to do it. And I'm kind of emphasizing this a little bit more because I had one student that was very religious, and he wrote great work. He did great work, But he didn't listen to me when I said these things, and he felt this need to kind of go on a crusade to say what was wrong with Mormonism, and I had to like rein in this person. And I don't like to try to rein in anybody, okay? Just I think he knew what he was doing, and you usually know if you're going that route, okay? So just respect each other. That's good, okay? And then the other points that I wanted to say is that I've had some of my students, I think, get a little bit frustrated. This has happened, a little bit earlier, about what they feel maybe is some of the political bias. And there's a lot of, and I've talked about this before, but I want to just kind of readdress this. Some people were saying, gosh, Howard Zinn just hitting conflict after conflict after conflict. And first of all, I want to say, as I said before, we're having a lot of conflict now. America has been built on a lot of conflict. First of all, we're so new. And I will just keep saying this to you because I want you to understand that we're talking about the 19th century. 19th century America is when the Civil Wars happened, and that's not that long ago. And so the issue of slavery, the issue of whites' relations to Native Americans, even look now, if you look at North Dakota, I posted something, and that wasn't being very unbiased of me. Native American lands treaties are being violated still, and the National Guard and police are going off to remove Native Americans off their own treaties lands and their sacred burial grounds in North Dakota right now as we speak. We're still kind of in this, right? Okay, black-white relations are still not resolved. But at the same time, I guess that some people feel like, hey, you're focusing on just those negative aspects of that. And I want to make it clear, what I like about this section that we just do this week is that we're going to address the issue of slavery still, because it became such a topic during this time. And Frederick Douglass will watch a video on this, on him. But also, these lectures, I get a chance to expose us to American culture, American poets and authors, and novel writers, and get us to kind of see, again, why don't we talk about more of that? Because that's also new. Developing American culture, we really become leaders in culture and world culture, through music and film in 102, in later times. In this section, we're not a literary cultural force in the world in the way that Germany had always been, or France, or the UK. So it makes sense that we're not getting a lot of that like integrated until around this time, that we're seeing in this. Okay, so lastly, I'm sorry for taking so long on this. I talked about this book, A Patriot's History of the United States, and I've been reading it along with Howard Zinn more, the book that we're reading, and trying to see what the real difference is. And sometimes they're not as different as they seem. This one simply tries to put a little bit more of a positive spin. But I just wanted to read this one thing real quick. I'm not going to explain the exact context, but you'll get my point in a second. So this is from the Patriot's History. And on page 153 we have it. It says, by 1800, the president had been spent much of his time in the new city of Washington. Hardly a city at all. And then it said, Adam disliked Washington, as in the new city. Okay, he had not liked Philadelphia much better, and managed to get back to Quincy, Massachusetts, to his beloved Abigail whenever possible. Never possessed of a sunny disposition, Adams drifted into deep pessimism about the new nation. Although he ran against Jefferson again in 1800, this time the Virginian, a shadow of a man, Adams calls him, for his ability to strike without leaving his fingerprints on any weapon, bested him. Anger and bitterness characterized the two men's relationship by that point. Of Jefferson, Adams wrote, "He has talents, I know, but and integrity, I believe, but his mind is now poisoned with passion, prejudice, and faction." Unquote. Political warfare had soured Adams even more since he had become president. Hamilton, who Adams called I'm quoting him, bastard brat of a Scotch peddler, unquote, vexed him from behind and Jefferson from the front. Now, here's what I was trying to read this. Here's our founding fathers talking in ways to each other that if I said that Hamilton was a bastard Scotsman with that derogatory language, or to speak ill of Jefferson in that way, right? That would be seen as a kind of a new anti-American hater, liberal or something. But this is how our founders were talking to each other, and you see Adam's cynicism about the state of the nation. Here's my point that I want to make. When we Americans disagree with each other, even about our historical figures, whether we love Jefferson or we talk mess on Jefferson or Jackson or whatever, I just want to point out that we're not being un-American at all. Like, Americans have been talking mess about each other and having different ideas about what America's supposed to look like from the beginning. That's the point I want to make. So I'm trying to take a negative and turn it into a positive, in the sense to say, if you think Howard Zinn is completely unfair to the founders, he's not being anti-American, or the early part of this history. He's being a different type of American, and he's celebrating a different type of American. Frederick Douglass was just as much an American as Thomas Jefferson in our history, right? But they represent almost kind of like two different sides, or Andrew Jackson, everybody we're talking about. And when Americans have a debate about the quality or the value of these characters or of our time periods or how we see it, we're just not going to see it the same. And because, black Americans experienced American history different than white Americans, we should always remind ourselves that it makes sense that they might have a very different take on things that we do. And same for, native tribe people of tribal background. Mexicans, and going into the Mexican-American War they're also going to have a different take on things. So, and I can keep going on and on and on and on. So, I just kind of wanted to pull us into some perspective on this, and hope that, especially because this election is getting so ugly and Americans are really boiling, I'm going to keep trying to rein this in, because we're going to go through this together, this whole election thing. And just remember that all of us really are Americans, and we have different visions, and we're just going to have to deal with each other, right? We're going to have to deal with what we have. And I'm hoping that at least our history that we cover clarifies why we're at where we're at, and helps us get a little bit of perspective, a sober perspective on maybe what we're going to have to come up and deal with it coming to each other. And that's that. So I think I've rambled on enough, and hopefully this wasn't too much for you to have to deal with these 13 minutes and 20 seconds. If you need anything, of course, always give me a call, and we'll be in touch.